Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today, we'll be exploring the biological field.
So now, not just any type of field is going to do that. It's got to be coherent. So we practice creating brain coherence. We actually measure it. We practice creating heart coherence. Why? Because once energy moves right up in here, and you can change resentment or frustration or impatience to joy, to freedom, to gratitude, and we're measuring to see if you're doing it. So now when the heart starts regulating, it starts beating like a drum, and it starts to produce a measurable magnetic field. It's up to 3 meters wide. Now, that energy is a frequency, and that frequency can carry information. That information is your thought, is your intent. In other words, the elevated emotion of gratitude can carry the thought of your health. The emotion of suffering cannot carry the thought of your health. And think positively all you want. If you're feeling miserable, your mind and body are in opposition.
Professor Liboff, describe your background, please.
All my degrees, my baccalaureate, Ph.D., have been in physics. I specialize in biophysics over the last 20 or 30 years, and the big change in my career was when I began studying piezoelectricity in bone, and that led me to an interest in the relationship between physics and living things. This led to a large meeting, international meeting, that was held in New York under the auspices of the New York Academy of Sciences in 1972. I proposed the hypothesis in 1984, but when we were working on bone, we also knew that the strength of the fields, of the currents that were being applied was much smaller than the end effect. In other words, we were seeing an effect which may have had too little energy. When I first proposed this, one of the reasons why there was an immediate disagreement was by people who are physicists, very good physicists, who told me that the energies were too small to entertain a cyclotron resonance concept. Let me just say, the concept itself involves taking a magnetic field, which is static, which is not changing, and adding to it, in the same direction, a field that is oscillating very, very slowly at low frequencies. Typically, we use the Earth's magnetic field, say the vertical component of the Earth's magnetic field, and to that we add an AC magnetic field, which is about the same size, namely 50 microtesla, but the field that we add is oscillating. It's a sinusoidal field. It's changing perhaps 8, 10, 50 times a second. 50 hertz, let's say.
I was wondering, how do you measure or determine if the electromagnetic field of a body is coherent or not? And also, can you influence the electromagnetic field and alter happenings in the body, or is it only from body out?
Okay, so Paul, you might be able to give a better answer than I will, but there's Kirlian photography that has been used amongst these yogic practitioners, where you can actually look at the field, electromagnetic field, and then you can also elucidate which part of the electromagnetic spectrum it is. This is very early stages, but right now everybody here is radiating an electromagnetic field that is at least 8 feet from where they are, that can be detected, and we are creating interference patterns. So at a very fundamental level, we are regulated by, we are regulating, we are monitored by, and we are monitoring each other's biology and emotional states and states of consciousness. So the yogic expression is, when a person is firmly established in non-violence, then all beings around him cease to feel hostility, including animals.
So energy, it is the essence of everything in nature. In physics, energy is one of the key topics, and we can derive all other moments like speed, like power from energy. So it is main physical principle. And you know that energy doesn't disappear, it just changes its structure, changes its form. We know there have potential energy, kinetic energy, there are energy of cosmos, energy of Earth. And when, for example, we go up to the mountains, we get potential energy. But if you fell from the mountain, you will get kinetic energy. And then this energy, when you drop down, will be transformed to the power of your impact. So, we are talking about energy, and you need to understand, we are energy beings. We run on energy. We have unlimited resource in our energy in our body. Main source of our energy for the body, it is our mitochondria. It's little tiny particle that we keep in every cell of our body. And this is like an energy station. This generates energy based on quantum principle. Please pay attention to this, because you need to understand. So, mitochondria, it's a quantum device. It is using electrons, positrons, and transfers this to energy. It stores energy in the form of complicated molecules, and then when we need, we can use those molecules to release energy.
So my name is Shamini, and I come from a research field called psychoneuroimmunology. Things that you can measure really easily, that measure electrical potentials, for example, from the body. So the EKG, the EEG, these are all examples of biofields. And we know that measuring those aspects of the biofield, we've learned how to deduce the information and have it tell us something very meaningful about our health. And there's some really interesting, significant advances that are being made in the area of veritable biofields. And Stuart Hameroff touched on this a little bit yesterday, including electroceuticals. Electroceuticals is a phrase that's coined by a couple of my colleagues in the area of bioelectromagnetics as potentially the next wave of big pharma. And there are a lot of pharmaceutical companies that are investing in these bioelectromagnetic approaches to treating disease. This just gives you one example of the myriad of different approaches that are being used right now. Pulse electromagnetic field stimulation, transcranial direct current stimulation, Stuart talked about transcranial ultrasound, quite a few that are being used now to look and see whether or not manipulating the biofield, that is manipulating electrical and magnetic currents at different frequencies, different pulse rates, can induce some kind of physiological change for the benefit of the living organism.
Mit dem Puls behält und so eine Resonanzwechselwirkung von Strahlung und Material entsteht, die zu Kohärenzeffekten führt. Ein ähnlicher Effekt ist die Fähigkeit bestimmter Materialien unter dem Einfluss elektromagnetischer Felder transparent zu werden. Der Effekt wurde erstmals 1976 beobachtet. Die Forscher weisen darauf hin, dass der Effekt auch im menschlichen Gewebe zu finden sein müsste. Unser Körper produziert diesen Effekt möglicherweise mit Hilfe seiner eigenen elektromagnetischen Felder, Biophotonen.
You have in one cell, you have per second about 100,000 chemical reactions. That's well known. So this is the average. And in order to regulate these functions, that at any instant, at the right position and at the right time, the right chemical reaction takes place, you have to have a most perfect informational system, which gives you the information so that a definite reactions has to take place. at the right time, and the only possibility for that are photons, because in order to trigger a chemical reaction you have to activate at least one of the molecules which takes part in the reaction. So, and to activate a molecule in the right range, the right spectral range, you have to have photons. So it was clear from the beginning on that this can happen only by photons which have to be in the cell. Of course, I recognized it later, not at the beginning already, but with the time I became aware that only photons could regulate these chemical reactions, the whole metabolism. And the high information content which is necessary can come only from the photons. Molecules are very stupid, they cannot regulate themselves. They have to have a field, more or less, electromagnetic field, which is necessary to activate the molecule.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we'll be exploring the biological field. People think that all of the various organs and enzymes and thousands of components of a biological system are all programmed by DNA.
Yes, and it can't be so that DNA is really regulating and orchestrating millions of things reacting every moment. There's got to be something holistic, and that's the biofield.
Yeah. Now, can you define the biofield? It's sort of elusive, isn't it?
Well, the biofield is the organizing energy of life within and around the organism. And I believe it's also involved in biocommunication and bioregulation of everything, including the DNA. It's really a minority of people looking at biofield phenomena in nature. But it's certainly important to try to explain how it is that energy healers or psychic healers can influence us. That there are emanations coming from the human body that apparently go beyond conventional energy and not just affect humans, but I did studies showing effects on bacterial cultures, which certainly document that it's beyond the notion of a placebo. Anybody could say, well, that's just because you think you're getting something, somebody's waving their hands around you, and, you know, the biology of belief. But when it happens at the level of the cell culture, that heat shock cell cultures that were damaged recover better from energy healing, from Reiki masters putting hands around cultures. And then I follow up counting cell numbers of viable cells in standard plate count assays. These studies were funded by the National Institutes of Health 20 years ago. And yes, indeed, we found positive results.
So now, not just any type of field is going to do that. It's got to be coherent. So we practice creating brain coherence. We actually measure it. We practice creating heart coherence. Why? Because once energy moves right up in here, and you can change resentment or frustration or impatience to joy, to freedom, to gratitude, and we're measuring to see if you're doing it. So now when the heart starts regulating, it starts beating like a drum. And it starts to produce a measurable magnetic field. It's up to 3 meters wide. Now, that energy is a frequency, and that frequency can carry information. And information is your thought, is your intent. In other words, the elevated emotional gratitude can carry the thought of your health. The emotion of suffering cannot carry the thought of your health. You can think positively all you want. If you're feeling miserable, your mind and body are in opposition.